Hello, it's Romanosky and Aidan Goss shooting from Calgary, Canada, and the Lug Nuts facility. And what we have here is a 1987 Mercedes Benz 560SL. So we'll do our usual long, thorough video broken into sections. We'll start with a little bit about the 560SL. I've owned enough of these vehicles that, I can give you a buyer's guide in brief. So I can talk a little bit about that, what to look for when you're buying one of these vehicles. Then we'll do an exterior walk around. We have a paint meter, and so we'll measure the paint depth, showing this to have all original paint. We'll go through the interior. We'll put the car on a hoist. We'll have a look at all the undercarriage. We'll look for corrosion. We'll look for damage. We'll look for leaks. We'll look for, anything out of the ordinary. We'll look through wheels and tires and so forth. And this video might take 45 minutes to an hour, which is how long it takes to go through one of these cars. They're not done, we're not doing this to get, likes and subscribes. Although please like and subscribe. But we do these videos for the person who might want to buy it. And collector cars are sold online now, sight unseen, the vast majority. On this vehicle is being auctioned on Bring a Trailer. And so to impart the greatest amount of confidence from somebody who might be bidding, possibly from another country, sending money to somebody they don't know for a car they haven't seen, that requires a lot of confidence, and the best way we do that is 200-300 photographs in an hour walk around video, and then we'll cap it off, of course, with a driving video as well. So let's get started on the 560SL and the R107s. The R107 was, the Mercedes Benz Sports Light Roadster. It came out in 1973, 72, 73, and went all the way to 1989. Started out with a 4.5 liter V8 cast iron block with aluminum heads. And then the first ones were badged 350SL for the first year, even though they had a 450 or a 4.5 liter engine. Then it was a 450SL all the way up to 1980. And then I believe we got the 380SL in 82 to 85, which was an all new aluminum V8. And then the 560 came out in 1986 and went till 1989. Just about everybody will prefer a 560SL because even in North America, it had, I think, 240 horsepower. Versus 180 or 190 for the 450SL. The 380SL is kind of the least desirable because it's only 150 horsepower, 3.8 liters. And the early 380SLs had some timing chain issues with the first couple of years. So, in the R107 world, people prefer the very, very early cars with the Euro bumpers. From 1973, and then the latest 560SLs. Okay, those are the most collectible. They made about 300 107s altogether, and about 3/4 of those were roadsters, and then 1/4 of those were coupes. Okay, so that's the 107. So they made a lot of these cars. And the prices, mostly because of that, the prices are pretty reasonable. There's a big jump when you get to the ultra low kilometer, like as new vehicles with 10 or 20,000 miles. They can be worth over $100,000. But most of these cars, fall in the 20s and the 30s. Okay, so there at any one time. Quite a few of these for sale, and they're for sale kind of everywhere. Obviously most of them are in, the biggest proportion are in California. Okay, So given that, you want to choose a good car. There's no reason to buy a rough car. Restoring one of these cars would be $200,000 plus. Nobody's going to restore a 107 generally, unless it's a very special variant. So you're looking to shop and buy well and get a fundamentally good car that doesn't require any kind of restoration or refurbishment generally. If you get a car with needs, especially a car with rust, there's no possibility of coming out ahead on that car. You might get it for a very low price and not do anything to it, and it might they're durable cars, so you might still be able to drive it, but you'd never be able to repaint or rechrome or retrim a 107 and generally like get your money back. So you really want to buy a good example. The mechanical parts are reasonably expensive or reasonably priced. Some of the trim pieces, it gets expensive fast. Okay, so number one is you need a car with no rust. Okay, so that is the first thing that you should get. Original paint is highly desirable because you can't repaint a car to the standards that they were new for any reasonable amount of money. It would be more than the car is worth. Okay, so if you can get a car with excellent original paint, or maybe one with a really, really good repaint, but that's extremely rare. Okay, so that would be, I would say that just about everything else is secondary to the body and the paint on this car. If you can get good glass, good lights, good all that, you don't have to replace any of that. Good chrome, that's a huge benefit as well. All right. In the interior, what seems to happen with these cars is they're either dry cars from Arizona or California, and they don't have any corrosion, but the sun has really taken its toll on the interior, and it cracks the dash. And there's no easy fix for a dash crack on these cars. You can, for $100 or $150, get a cheap plastic cover, and you'll be very difficult to tell in photographs whether it's got a dash cap or it's the original soft touch vinyl dash. The $100 dash caps are really awful, but you can't tell on the photographs, okay? So dry cars have their advantages, but they might have some UV damage. The weather stripping might be dried out, the dash might be cracked, the leather might be dry, the wood might be bleached, and it is evidence from being left in the sun, okay? If you get a car from a place with salt, like let's say you get a car from Canada, Montreal, or New York, or something like that, then the car can be very rusty. And those cars aren't salvageable at all. The leather will still be nice, and the wood will still be nice, and the dash won't be cracked, but the body's rusty. Okay, so finding a car that's dry, that is unrusty, but it still has a nice interior, is really quite rare. Now, those cars come from places like Victoria or San Diego maybe, or some places that aren't in the desert, or just really just garaged all the time, okay? So on the body paint interior, that would be the main thing to look at, in my opinion. The mechanicals are more straightforward because they're common to all the Mercedes sedans as well. But they're a complicated car, and everything can be fixed, but it adds up. So, and then when these cars come up for sale, it's usually because, they weren't being driven. So even though the car might have been well maintained, it might have been parked, the owners might be elderly, and the thing wasn't driven for 10 or 15 years. And then you get the car, and all of a sudden you want to drive it every day, and then it starts costing you a lot of money. So these cars, like any others, will have leaks. And they're not too bad to fix, but you can get, valve cover leaks. You can get, oil pan leaks. The bottom of the transmission, you can get leak. I don't really see rear main seals in these cars very often, so at least you don't have to pull the engine out. I've never had to pull the engine. I've had 25 of these. I've never had to pull an engine out of one of these cars. But they all kind of need valve covers. They'll all need a power steering pump rebuild. The air conditioning, almost never works. The cruise control, almost never works. What I find as well is that when they go in for service, normally when you do a tune-up on a car, you do the distributor cap and you do the points and you do the the fuel filter and a bunch of other stuff. A lot of times that just never gets done on these cars. So you'll look at it and the spark plug, you'll get a car that's 40 years old and the spark plug wires will be original to the car. The distributor cap will be original to the car. The rotor will be, original to the car. Who knows how long the plugs have been in there, et cetera. So often people just never do that. And, the parts are pretty expensive. Like a distributor cap for, like an Austin Healey or something might be $40. For this car, it's like $300. Proper Bosch spark plug wires are, a couple $100 or something like that. But they might be $50 for an ordinary car. So that kind of stuff just never gets done. So you could get a car that's well preserved and that has no rust and that the interior isn't dried out, but you might find that you need to go through the whole car and just do all the ignition related stuff, all the filters, all the fluids. Who knows when it got a transmission service. Hardly anybody ever changes the diff oil on the car, et cetera, okay? So a mechanical major service on the car, or any car, really, if you go through all that thing, is, kind of 10 grand, right? So you can buy a perfect car that just has not been maintained in a while and it can still be $10,000. Okay, so that all being said, if you've got a good body and you've got a good paint and you've got a good dash and you've got good leather and you've got good carpets and you've got good chrome and whatever, then spending $10,000 on the tune-up bits that will get you another 20 years is not an objectionable expense, because you're just basically prepaying the expense for the next time you're going to own the car. Okay, so I think that's a fair comment on any 560SL, is the important things to buy. Then you have to make the call as to, where you are in the price spectrum, and that is they're all the same. There's no difference in options or anything. There's color difference, but that doesn't really seem to mean too much. I mean, sometimes if you get a really odd color, it can get a premium. But what you're really buying is I would say, when you factor in the cost of getting the maintenance up to date on the road, that would be a big factor in the price, and then the mileage. So you can still find these cars with 20,000 miles on them that look brand new. And those cars are expensive. They're 60, 70, 80, even more than $100,000 for the very, very best cars. If you get below, like, they probably starts at $10,000. And keep in mind, you've got something like 200,000 examples to choose from, like, that were made. When you get to 10,000, you're generally talking like rusty cars, or cars that have like just really, really high mileage, or a lot of things wrong with them. And there is no reason to ever buy one of those cars. Like, even if you only had 10,000, it would never make sense to buy those. You would want to save up another 10,000 and actually get a decent car, because you'll burn through the 10,000 instantly and you'll still have a $10,000 car, okay? So then you're looking, well, do you want a show car or do you want a driver? And the drivers are generally in the 70 to 100,000 mile range. And then you're just going on condition, maintenance history, how well is maintained, et cetera, and you're buying in. And those cars are generally in the 20s and 30s. Anything less than 20, you know, it could be a real bargain. You might get lucky, but you might also buy a car for 15 grand and then need to spend another 20 on it. And that does happen. All right. So that brings us to this car. Where does it fit in? Well, it is 93,000 miles. So it is not going to be a $100,000 car. It's not the top of the market. There's lots of SLs with 20,000 miles. So this is a driver, but it's all original. It hasn't been modified. It has all of the original paint, glass, and chrome and interior. So it's never really been touched. It's just been maintained and driven sparingly, but over 40 years or whatever, that does add up. Okay, so it was bought by a friend of mine in California, in Palm Springs, I believe, in California, and it was driven down there for a few years. I think it was bought around 2015 or so, and then it was imported into Canada, I think in 2022 or 2023, and then I did the out-of-province inspection on it, the safety inspection, so it could get registered in Alberta. And at that time, we found that it needed the steering box replaced, because that is a common thing with these cars, a remanufactured steering box. And so we did that to it. And then we went through the entire, we did a full major service, plugs and wires and distributor cap, et cetera, battery, and we got all of that renewed. We did some dry ice blasting underneath the car, changed all the fluids, and then it was good. It was, I think 2023, it was like fully maintained. It was a $6,000 bill. And then subsequent to that, it came back with power steering leak from the power steering hoses. So those were replaced in January 2026. Sorry. It was later in 2025, in the fall of 25. And that brings us to where the car is now. So we'll go through the car condition-wise, but to sum up what this car is, it's a car that's lived just about its entire life in California, except for a couple of summers in Calgary. It's no accidents, no paint work, all original paint, glass, and chrome, interior, et cetera. It is a well-maintained car. It's always been a well-maintained car. Drives really nicely, and there's no upcoming big bills on this car. Okay, so with the exterior, we've got obviously the paint, we've got panel gaps, we've got door shuts, we've got the fit of the bonnet, the fit of the trunk, so we can go through that. Then we can look at chrome, we can look at glass, we can look at the rubber, we can look at the soft top, make sure all the trim is there, and go through all of those items. So overall, I mean, the car, I don't know how you'd expect any original paint to be in better condition than this. I mean, what's interesting is it was common to pinstripe these cars when new, and that looks to me like a hand-painted pinstripe. I mean, normally you'd expect them to be taped on, but I think that's actually hand-painted. And then when you look at it, you can see that it fades, around these areas during, with the handle, and you've got this kind of even patina all around the car. So the easiest way to tell if it's original paint is to look at these panels. Well, you can't replace faded pinstriping and match it. That would be impossible. So we can just see that walking around the car, that, you know, all this original pinstriping is in place, and it's all starting to kind of fade in different amounts depending on where it is. And, you know, that tells you right away that it's original paint. I'll go through it with a paint meter, and we can verify that. Next, let's look at door fit, door gaps. I mean, we know that if it has its original paint, we know that it hasn't been repainted, we know that it hasn't been hit, so we're not expecting anything funny with any of the door gaps, and they're perfect. And nor are we expecting anything different with any of the closures of the door. And we'll do the trunk, which is perfect, and we can see the gaps around the trunk are perfect. Fuel filler cap, you know, is all the gaps there are good. And passenger door is good, okay? We can check the alignment of the hood. You can look at the gap here. This is probably the most telling. And look at the gap there. All right, so they're the same. So all the panels fit perfectly. None of them have been repainted. All the door gaps are good. All the alignment of the panels is good. So that's huge in any classic car. Let's move to glass. So I guess we can start with the windshield, and we can see that it's a Mercedes Benz windshield. We can see that there's maybe a little bit of pitting, the odd little mark in it. It wouldn't surprise me if it's the original windshield. You know, we've got the odd little pit. There's no cracks, there's no star or anything like that, but there are, you know, a couple little marks from rocks, okay? Barely noticeable, but they're there. All right, so we've got that. Let's look at the lights now. So, first of all, you know, these are fairly vulnerable to stone chips. I think they're about $500 a piece, and the orange will generally get faded, and it'll start crazing and getting cracked over time. So we see that the lenses are still in good shape. The headlights, this surround is uncracked. The amber side glass is unfaded. It's uncrazed. All the glass in the front looks good. We can go to the back, and same thing in the back. You know, the taillight lenses are still bright, and they're not crazed, and they're not faded. And and I'm sure most people know, but they have this ribbed in the era that was so that it helped keep the taillights clean in bad weather. And that's why that was the design feature on those. We can look at rubber and chrome. Let's look at the bumpers. And so what happens to these is that, first of all, they get scraped, and then they get scuffed, right? From just parking maneuvers. These ones are good. I don't see any marks on them. And the chrome will eventually, it'll start to oxidize, and it'll start to pit. And when it starts to pit, then it'll start to rust eventually. It's very durable stuff. So we've got some uniform light scratching on the top of the chrome, but we don't see any pitting or any oxidation. It's still bright, and there's no marks on the corner of the bumper. Okay, we can check the door guards, and these are riveted to the door skin. And what can happen is that these get bumped or jostled, and then the rivet gets a bit loose, and this piece gets loose, water gets in there, and it starts to rust the steel door skin. And then you get telltale little bits of rust underneath where the rivets are. So we don't see any of that at all. and these are still firmly attached, and we don't see any gouges out of the door trim or this guard as well. And there's little fasteners, little screws that hold these things in place, and they can rust solid and so on, because they're obviously in a very vulnerable position with all the road salt, and so this fastener isn't even rusted. So they're straight. I don't see any marks out of them. There's no dents in them, and it all looks factory to me. Putting these back on properly is not easy if you have to replace them, and I don't know who has the patience to do it, but I've never been able to get them back on and have them look like new. Okay, I'm sure somebody can do it, but it's not that easy. Okay, so this has never been disturbed. The paint's never been disturbed, and all this looks in good shape. We can go to the front bumper. Again, we're looking at the corners to see if they're scuffed up, and there's a little bit of a mark there, but very, very minor. I don't see anything on the front of these, and this corner looks good as well, and the bumper shows no oxidation. If we look at the grille, again, the same thing. This starts out black, and it kind of turns gray over time, and it almost turns like white if you get a sun-damaged car. So we can, and these are susceptible to get broken from stones, so we don't see any breaks in these slats for the grille. If the car's been in the sun, this will fade, and all the blue paint on the badge will start to go, and it'll fade. So that tells me that it's been out of the sun. As well, the condition of the rubber as well. Okay, if it was in the sun, this would be faded. There would be oxidation on the chrome, and there would be you could see it in the rubber. Again, it turns kind of light gray or white over time. So I don't see any of that. All the glass and chrome looks good. Got the original windshield. These the windows, the trim strips around the window. You can see it, a little bit of oxidation there, and you can bring that up with some metal polish. But that's what will happen to it eventually, is it'll start to kind of get a little white and chalky. Okay, and then after that it'll start to rust. Okay, we have the original wiper arms in silver. Surprisingly, they're hard to find. The replacement ones all come in black, so we still have the original silver wipers. And when you see ones with black wipers, they kind of look silly. All right, chrome on the mirrors looks good, and again, all the rub strips on the door and the front and rear fenders are all undisturbed. Fasteners are unrusty, and there's no chunks or scrapes taken out of them. We can go to the alloys. These are chrome-plated alloys. The tires on these, I think, date to, they're about 10 years old, and they've got still lots of tread on them. They're not dry cracking, but they are 10 years old, and they could be replaced. You don't have to, but any tire that's 10 years old, you should consider replacing. Okay, and there's no uneven wear from the rubber, and I don't see any curb rash on any of the wheels. Take a look at all those. And they're Bridgestone tires, which is nice. It's a pet peeve of mine when you get like cheap, no-name tires on these cars. It just tells you what may have been skipped if somebody put really cheap tires on the car. Okay, these are Bridgestones. All right, so I guess we can finish it up with the soft top. And I think this is the original top to the car. It's black. We can see where it's been repaired here. We can see that it's a little bit yellowed. We can see where it gets pinched when you put it in. That gets pinched a bit, but the fabric's all in nice shape. The window could, maybe use some polish to try to reduce the yellowing of it. And I guess that is, well, no, that's just kind of a mark in there, and that's where this thing folds when it goes in. So that'll eventually develop into a tear. It's not there yet, but eventually it will. But you can replace the glass, because I don't think you need to replace the canvas in it, because the canvas is still all really nice. Okay. So that is the exterior. Rust-free, original paint, good door fit, trunk fit, bonnet fit. All the original trim is still in place. All good glass, all good chrome, all good rubber. You know, a really honestly presented, well looked after original car is how I'd sum up that. Okay, let's go into the interior next. Okay, so let's do the paint meter now. I can already tell you, looking at this, that you know you've probably paint thickness that is around 100 micrometers, which is about 1/10 of a millimeter, and that's just what you get from old paint that's maybe been polished. So 124, 137, 141. 157, 168, 130. If it was repainted, we see 3s and 4s. Okay, so this is all original paint. 103, 135, 144. It actually shows that it hasn't been polished that much. I was expecting a little bit less. A lot of these cars get polished a lot, and you can get readings under 100. They would have started out around, you know, around this, 150, 180, something like that. 34, 200, 171, 197, 198, 205, 176, 140, 143, 147, 188, 203, 216, 128, 175, 177, 175. Okay, so that's, we'll do the hard top just for good measure. 159, 175, 170, 202, 194. Okay, and I suppose I can show you, you know, a repaint, which would be this Healy was obviously repainted. And, you know, 1283, 521, 641, 634, 420. Okay, so that's a repaint. And this is all original paint. Okay. Oh, that door? All right. 117, 114, 142. Okay. All uniform, you know, the largest variation is probably less than 100 micrometers, which is less than 1/10 of a millimeter, is the greatest variation of paint on the entire car. So it doesn't get any better than that. And I guess we might as well, now that we've looked at the roof, lower the roof so we can get maybe a better look in the interior. And so we'll have the tools, which we'll put in. We'll release it here. Okay, so we free that up. Then we can fold the seat, and we will release the pin. We will fold this up. The tonneau goes back, and then this then folds in there. Now, if you take your time to make this a nice radius corner, then you don't get that pinch in the glass in the window. So if we take a little bit of care and just do that, keeping in mind that this top might not go back up for a long time. Fold these little corners in. Is that right? Okay. And then fold that down. All right. So we got that done. And let's have a look inside. Okay, so if you're looking at a 107, I mean, the first thing you're going to look at is, I would say, most importantly, is the dash. So if you come in here, and you can see where it is just starting to crack up here. You know, it hasn't made it very far, but it's just starting. And, you know, they'll basically all do it. But in the scheme of 107s, that is pretty good. All the rest of the dash is in good shape. The worst ones will have like big cracks like that go through it if it's all in California. So this isn't even noticeable if you're not looking for it. And otherwise, we've got really good looking interior. The next thing I would look at is the wood. It starts out like a dark brown, burr walnut. But if it's in the sun, this will take on like a caramel tone with even sort of light brown kind of patches. And so an indication as to how much sun exposure the car has had is how dark the wood is. And is the wood mismatched between this panel, which wouldn't get as much sun as this panel. So the color of this wood tells me that, you know, the car was out of the sun, basically, which is also why the dash doesn't have any bad cracks, which is also why the signal light lenses aren't crazed, which is also why the rubber is still black, etc. Okay? So the interior, all that looks good. Next, I think probably the most important thing is the seat. And it's very, very durable. We've got a little bit of patina on the driver's bolster, which you'd expect with 90,000 miles. It's worth noting that for $10, you can get some gray fabric or gray leather paint and just paint it, and then you can't see it in the photographs. But then you ruin the aroma and you ruin the suppleness of the leather, and it just becomes like a kind of a gross plastic coating. I'd much rather have honest patina than somebody who just spray painted the leather to, you know, make it look good for the photographs. Okay. Otherwise, you know, it shows some basically patina as you'd expect for a car this mileage, but there's no rips or tears in it. And like I said, importantly, it's never been re-dyed or repainted. It still has the original sort of aroma and the original feel. And then, you know, as you'd expect, the passenger seat is hardly any wear on it at all. Compared to the driver's seat. We can also get a good look into the carpets, in the footwell, the driver's seat. You know, if the car is driven, I mean, a lot of these cars are driven in the winter, and you'll see that the rocks and kind of moisture and stuff that was let in has really sort of wore away. You know, the abrasiveness of the slush and the dirt, you know, wears away the carpets and so on. So in this car, you know, we don't have any of that. If we can come over here, if the car, like let's say, you know, it was flooded or the top was left down and water was left to collect here, this is this kind of rubber matting, and it'll start to, if there's water that's let in the car, it'll start to rust. This thing will lift. It'll all start cracking, and it'll be just a big giant mess underneath there. So, you know, the original rubber matting on the floor pan, you know, that's all there. We can see even the original cadmium, the platings on the bolts in there. You want to zero in on that?
Yeah, you can see.
All right. So okay. So, you know, it's a dry car. Nothing bad ever happened to it. We'll check the passenger side as well. Lift this up. And you can see all that still, all this foam, you know, it's not saturated with water, it doesn't smell, you know, there's nothing living in there. I mean, it does happen. Okay, so all of that is in good shape. You know, normally the cars would have a floor mat on top of that, like a cocoa mat or something like that. So this one, you know, that is something that you could do. Other things to look for, you know, these are plastic, kind of chrome-plated plastic pieces that cover up the door mechanism. These things are relatively fragile and crack and break off and stuff, so they're still there. The chrome on top of here is in nice shape. And again, seat belts are in decent shape. And again, all these covers and hardware is in good shape. The sill still looks good. The steering wheel doesn't have any marks in it. With the wood also, it's very, very common for the wood to start having, you know, hairline cracks in the clear veneer. In fact, most of them do. And this one, I'd be surprised if it didn't have anything. Yeah, I mean, you can see you can see a few little cracks in the veneer starting. You'll barely ever find one that doesn't. But this one, you can't even notice it unless you look at it really, really closely, okay? So all the wood is in excellent shape. And then let's go to the engine bay. All right, so it has been tidied up. You know, we've been through it with plugs and spark plug wires and distributor cap and rotor and all the filters. That's all done. Fluids are done. Did that whole major service a few thousand kilometers ago in, I guess it was 2023. And it's had at least one oil change since then. You know, one thing that happens to these cars is you can see this is starting to kind of crack a little bit. Well, sometimes that piece, you know, just totally disintegrates. Also, the hood pad. Now, this is probably on its second hood pad because that gets hot and it crumbles. We know that we just replaced the power steering lines, which live, well, where do they live? Down here. So those were just done because they were leaking. And I believe the reservoir for the power steering fluid was also resealed, okay? And what else do we do to this car? I didn't think it really needs anything else. And it's just kind of got its normal maintenance. Okay? So now we do have the AC system, and there's a leak in the AC system somewhere, which is abnormal for these cars. It has not been retrofitted with R134. In the front of the car, we can see the VIN. Of course, all that matches, ending in 70390. And we can see the data plate for the car, which is here. And the 147 is the Arctic white, I believe. And then, I can't remember what the gray is. Anyway, gray leather interior, can't remember. And then these numbers are the options here: 442, 194, 519, 551, 581, 262, 807. Interesting, they still use a lot of those numbers today for the option codes. And they'll just be like North American spec and left-hand drive and, oh, I forget what 551 is. But anyway, there weren't really many options on a 560SL. They came fully loaded. The other thing you might look for is, you know, evidence that, you know, the fenders have been replaced, and we don't see that. You know, that you might look for evidence that any of these pieces have been, you know, showing signs of been tampered with, and they haven't. You know, we can look at these fasteners here for corrosion. You know, all this stuff looks pretty good. It just looks like an honest 90,000 mile car. Dry $90,000 car, okay? What else can we look at underneath? I think that's probably about it. And let's go to the trunk. Okay, in the trunk area, I guess one thing we can look at is these panels have VIN stickers on them, so 70390. So that matches the VIN of the car. And we can also see, you might as well come over there as well. Take a look at that. And I mean, we know it has original paint, but you know, you can also look for those stickers and showing that you know, it's got the original 70390 on the doors and the trunk lids. You can look for that. Okay, so inside we've got this, this is peeled up a little bit there. It should sit like this. But anyway, the carpet is in nice shape. I mean, sometimes, you know, people spill stuff on them and they can stain or whatever, so all that looks good. We can pull this up, and then we see the well for the spare tire, and that's an original 205/65 VR15 Pirelli P6. That was original to the car. And then we do see the original tool roll. Okay, so that's still in the car. And let's put that back in. Okay, we've got the first aid kit here. And then we've got the, this is where the battery lives. And it's a new Bosch battery. Okay. Probably just leave that. Okay, so we have this 560SL up on the hoist. So let's take a really good look underneath. We'll see that it is a really dry California car with almost a total absence of any corrosion at all. So that's the main thing. But let's have a look at it. We'll look at the suspension. We'll look at all the rubber. We'll look for accident damage. We'll look for corrosion. Check out the fasteners, the floor pans, and just go through the underside of this car. Let me turn the camera around. All right, so let's start underneath. We can start with the front spoiler. I mean, these can be vulnerable, and this lower rubber strip, you know, can be chewed up. And in this car, it actually looks really nice. And then we'll look at the lower edge of the bumper as well. If there was corrosion, you know, you'd see it on these fasteners. Sometimes, I mean, the light lenses break. And as they age, they tend to craze and crack. So we can get a good look at these. And they're all in nice shape, and they're expensive too. So let's have a look at that. And what we see is no marks on the bumper and no scuffs. The lenses are in good shape. Spoiler's in good shape. All these, you know, radiator openings are all nice as well, okay? And let's go around the sill, maybe. So if they're going to rust in the lower bits of the bodywork. These jacking holes are susceptible. This area here, where most of the time, I mean, you should be putting the lift there, or the pad there, but a lot of times they're put here. It scrapes off the undercoating, and then this area is susceptible to rust, and we don't see that it is there. That's in good shape. You know, even the fasteners holding on the trim, you know, that'll rust solid pretty easily. So, and that's all in nice shape. Okay, no damage there. And we see the factory finish on the sills. We see the other jacking point, and again, there's no corrosion there. No corrosion on the underside of the wheel arch. We can get back here, and you know, this area here behind the wheel is going to fill up with gunk, and it can start to rust in there, okay? So we don't see any rust at all. This car, I do not believe, has ever seen anything but nice weather, okay? And you can tell when you get a good look around at all these pieces, okay? So all this is completely solid. There's no soft metal at all. There's no accumulation of dirt and grime that is sitting in the back here. Even the fasteners are in good shape. So let's go to the other sill, and we can see the jacking point's still in good shape. All the, you can see this is broken up a little bit from jacking, but there's no rust in there. Okay, so that's good. And we'll just go through the sill and look at the front again. And that hasn't been refinished. I believe that is all factory. And then we can look at the other side of the wheel arch, and all of that is solid. There's no rust that is, even the fasteners are in good shape. There's no rust on the floorboards, the toe board, on either side, okay? So that, I think, might take care of corrosion, accident damage. This all looks pretty good. We can, the exhaust will be, one of the first things to rust. It's just mild steel. It has these, the steel kind of cover on it. And we can see, a slight bit of corrosion starting, but, in the heat shield. But these are the original pieces. That's excellent for a 560. Most of the time that piece just rusts off. And we can see some light surface corrosion, but no holes or anything like that. It looks like the silencer was replaced at one point. So that isn't factory, that is a new addition, but whatever, it functions fine. All right, next, why don't we have a look for the rubber pieces? I'll get a light here just to help us out. And sometimes with dry cars, the climate's dry, but it takes out all the rubber with it. The rubber dries out. So we can see, a little bit of cracking on the top of this anti-roll bar bush. Not bad, but starting to go. We can see, the rest of it looks okay. There's nothing that's metal on metal. It doesn't make any noises. We can see a little bit of deterioration there. Those look okay. Those look okay. No leaking from the shocks. That looks, I don't know if that's grease or what that is. I think it's just grease on that. Again, the car is extended, so that's out of place. Again, a little bit of cracking on those, but that's pretty straightforward. And these guys look okay. No, it looks all right. Maybe some of the rubber, you can see signs that it's starting to crack, but I wouldn't be doing anything to it now. But it'll be, eventually you'll have to do it. These ones look more recent. For the steering, and all those look in good shape. Okay, let's go to the brake lines. All look good. There's no leaking from any of the calipers. We'll go look in the rear suspension. These boots for the axles, they all look okay. They're not torn. Rubber mounting for what is that? The differential, that looks okay. No leaks back here. Brake lines look okay. All this looks reasonable. A little bit of sweating from the rear diff, but nothing I'd worry about. There's the fuel filter and fuel pump. Usual places. All looks decent in the rear. Okay, so in terms of all the rubber pieces, the alignment's fine. These tires are, well, the tires of a date code of 2016, so they're probably due for replacement. You can see a little bit of dry cracking maybe to start, but the good thing about old tires is if the alignment's good, and you can see there's no abnormal wear on the front tires. Okay. So there's no corrosion, there's no damage. All the rubber looks in decent shape. The probably could use new tires in the next little while. All these ones are fine. No damage, no corrosion. It all looks good. It's an honest 93,000 mile Mercedes 560SL. And you can, but the takeaways here are that it's not rusty, and that's the big one. When R107 SLs are rusty, that you can't really do much about it. You just have to live with it, or make them parts cars. It does not make economic sense to restore them. So the first thing you look for with one of these cars, in my opinion anyway, is there any corrosion? And you just don't see any in any of the fasteners. It's obvious that, it's just obvious that this is a dry car. Okay, so that wraps up the underneath of the 560SL. Okay, so now we can do a cold start on the vehicle. It's been here for several hours. It is stone cold. We'll fire it up, and then we'll put the microphone in the engine, in the engine bay, and we'll listen for any untoward noises. There aren't any, but we'll demonstrate that, and then we'll go for a short drive and demonstrate that the car works. Okay, so I will start it up. I'll put the microphone somewhere where you can hear it. Here. Okay, so we'll take this outside just to not fume up the shop here. Okay, so a few things about these 117 engines. The one thing you can listen for on startup is slap from the timing chain, where the timing chain tensioner doesn't adequately tension the timing chain, and it slaps against the guides. And these guides are kind of like a vinyl material, plastic material, and they deteriorate and break with age. And if they break, then the timing chain can skip, and it's an interference engine. So you want to be careful that when you start these up, you don't hear this very, very characteristic kind of clack, clack, clack until the timing chain tensioner is pressurized. This one doesn't do it, okay? Now it's 93,000 miles, and there's going to be people that say, oh, you better do it. I think, from my own experience, they give you lots of warning, and so I think you're good for a while, but it's something I would really pay attention to. The noise from the front of the engine on startup, okay? This one just doesn't do that. Also, these engines, they can get you can get some valve noise. Sometimes they can be different, left to right. So I'll put the microphone on the left-hand bank. And the right-hand bank, and I don't hear any difference, and there's no loud valve noise or tappity noise suggesting the car needs a valve job. Usually at like 150,000 miles, you might have to do that, but this one at 93, you don't. We can put the microphone at the front of the engine, and we can listen for squeaks from, the water pump or power steering pump. We can, look for leaks from the water pump or the radiator. You don't see any of that at all. The fuel injection system, the CIS system, will hunt around a little bit in the idle, and this one does. It's entirely normal. There's nothing about the way this runs that indicates any kind of a problem whatsoever. And for the mileage, it's actually a really beautiful, smooth example of this 5.6 liter engine. Okay, so no issues whatsoever here. We'll look at some of the gauges now. Okay, so the first thing you can look at with these cars is oil pressure, and they should always peg at 3 bar when the oil's cold. And this car has 040 in it, Mobil one, I think, synthetic oil. Okay, so when the engine gets hot, and you've been driving it for 15-20 minutes or something like that, generally you'll get oil pressure, above 1 bar. With a high mileage car with 30 weight oil, you might get between 0 and 1 bar, but for 40 weight oil, 16 degrees Celsius, 20 minutes of driving, I'm expecting the oil pressure to drop in between 1 and 2 bar. And the temperature is just under 80 now, and it usually rises just above 80, depending on the temperature. Okay. The clock does work. The radio does work. We are getting cold air from the AC system. Cool air at least, but it's definitely not, it's definitely working. It's maybe not ice cold, but it's actually not too bad. Okay. So let's just check out the operation of this. It's also worth noting that these 560SLs have a different climate control system than the earlier 450SLs, and those could be problematic and actually very complex and not much fun to try to fix. Okay, so now we're getting heat, so that all seems to work perfectly well. Defrost works, getting nice and hot. We have the windows, which are good. They're not, sometimes they're really slow. Windows work good. Central locking works on the doors, on the trunk, all that functions correctly. Electric mirror on the passenger side, that works. We've got a manual driver's mirror. Sun visors stay up. And there is not much else on these cars. Okay, we'll go for a quick drive and just sort of see how it all works. I've probably driven 100 of these in sedan, coupe, and convertible versions. Okay, so nice power. We have an aftermarket tailpipe, not a Mercedes tailpipe. So I'm picking up actually a slightly different exhaust tone, but not objectionable. What else can I tell you about it? Brakes are nice, they're not squeaking. Gearbox operating correctly. We redid the steering box on this car. We put a remanufactured box in it. There was some slop and some sort of binding when I first got the car a couple of years ago, and that was the steering box that was kind of ending its life. Outside temperature works. Signal lights work. We're up just about 80 degrees C. Still at 3 bar oil pressure. These are terrible roads, just like a lot of industrial traffic. All right, so accelerates nice throaty roar, shifts correctly, it's positive, not harsh. Some of them can be harsh, and some of them can be slow. So this one's just right. I don't have any rotational vibration from the tires or when I'm on the brakes. Our alignment, I know our alignment's good because we just did the steering box. So all of that is good. Don't hear any wind noise or leaks. We have the hard top on it now. And it's behaving itself like a 560SL should. One of the few classic cars that you can kind of easily drive daily, at least in the summer. Still practical, great visibility. They're unfussy. Like I said, the tune-up parts aren't expensive. Mercedes, any Benz dealer can get you whatever you want parts. Good availability for parts. You know, most of the time, whatever you need is warehoused in Canada. You know, trim pieces and stuff might be Germany, but generally you can get it all from a Benz dealer, or you can get it, I think the Mercedes Classic Center now in Irvine selling 107 parts. You can get it there, and they just DHL you the stuff the next day. And or you can go online, companies like Pelican, and you can get, you know, they often have like new Mercedes Benz parts in a Mercedes Benz box. They have like new Mercedes Benz parts that might be in a Bosch box or one of the tier 1 supplier boxes, and then they have reproduction. They give you the, you know, 3 different versions of virtually every mechanical part, so you can choose what goes in the car. Overall, I mean, it's tight, solid. I mean, it drives like a 560 SL should. Only, well, I guess I'm not sure the signal light it should self-cancel, and I don't think it did that. So I think that's one thing I just discovered, is that you have to manually put the signal light back. So if I just put the signal light on, it should self-cancel, and this one didn't. So that's one thing about the car that doesn't work. Let me just check the AC again. Yeah, cool but not cold, I say is fair. We're getting colder. It's getting a bit colder now. Maybe everything still works, but maybe it's getting a little bit low on refrigerant. Okay, let's put it back to the normal temperature. I guess we can start out in first gear. Hardly anybody ever does that, but this was the sportiest automatic gearbox you could get in the day. But people complained that it wouldn't start off in first gear; it started off in second gear. So that's the workaround for it. But it's a fast car. Get up to highway speeds easily.
Exhaust sounds good.
Refined, yeah. Actually, I think it did cancel for me that time. So maybe it's just a little bit sticky or something. We'll try it again with this intersection. Brakes are powerful. You know, there's a really big difference between, because I've had 450s as well, and there's a really big difference between the way they drive. The earlier cars, they have a 3-speed gearbox and like 180 horsepower, and there's a big difference between 180 and 240, and then there's a big difference between the 3 and 4-speed gearbox. So you couple the higher power with the 4-speed instead of 3-speed, and also the alloy heads probably shave, I don't know what it is, probably 50-60 kilos off the front of the car. So the wheels and tires are bigger. They're 15-inch instead of 14-inch. They're lower profile tires, and so you add all those together, and a 560 drives like a much more modern car than the 380 or the 450. A 380 is just really slow and really soft, and then you press the gas and like not much happens. It's not that satisfying a car to drive, in my opinion. There's a big difference between, like a huge difference between the 560 and the 380, and while the 450 SLs have more power, they're still fairly, with the old gearbox, there's a big difference. So this is it kind of gives you 70s style, but 80s mechanicals, I suppose. So again, it's one of the best classics for daily driving. I can't think of anything that from the 80s that you'd want to daily drive more than a Mercedes. I've had one Mercedes or another, usually all from the 80s, for 25 years since I started with Mercedes in '01. And I remember going through the shop when I started. I had an Integra Type R at the time, no real interest in any German cars, I guess except for Porsches. But I started at Mercedes, and I'd go through the shop and I'd see all these '80s Mercedes, and they all looked like brand new. And yet they had 1 and 2 and 300,000 kilometers on them, and I just couldn't get over how in great shape these vehicles were for the kilometers. Like, some of them looked like they'd never even been driven, and they had 150 or 200,000 kilometers on them. So I got super excited about these old Benzes and bought a 560SL SEL sedan first. And I was just blown away by the quality of construction and the durability of the machine. And since then, I guess that's the fall of '01, I've had basically an '80s Mercedes virtually every month since, including daily driving them for at least half of the years. When my first son was born, I bought a 420 SEL 126 as my family transport. Anyway, I still feel the same way about 1980s Mercedes Benzes. They, in that era, they only made 4 cars. They made the SL and then 3 different sizes of sedan: the 190, the 190E, the 300s, and then the big 126s. This car was in production for 18 years. The other cars were in production for like a good 10 years. So you've got this company with the engineering might of Mercedes only making 4 cars and keeping them in production for between 10 and 20 years. Well, they could really focus on the quality and annual improvements and so on. Translate that to today, and how many cars does Mercedes have? 50?
Can you name them all?
Yeah, no. And now the numbers don't mean anything. They must have 50 cars, and then they change them every 5 years. And then so you go from an era where Mercedes were the most expensive cars, except for the exotics and Rolls-Royce and so on. They had the best reliability. They had the best safety. They had the best owner retention. They had the best customer satisfaction. Like, they literally led on every single metric that there was for decades. And then, in around 2000, they were sold to Chrysler, and then they started chasing volume, and now, a new Mercedes is the same price as a top-end Honda. And so the brand completely changed. But in this era, the engineers made the car. They made the best car they could. The accountants priced it. It was 50% more than anything else. That was the price if you wanted a Mercedes. All the rich people bought them. Most of them really looked after the cars. And you got, the best car in the world. Even if you paid 2 or 3 times as much and got a Rolls-Royce, it was not a better car. In fact, it was worse. These were the best cars that could be made in the 80s. And so what that means is 30 or 40 years later, if they're looked after, they still have a lot of longevity in them. They're still nice to drive. They still look great. They still have, if you get one with the original finishes, it's still beautiful. And only because they made so many of them, they're not expensive to buy. So, if somebody says, I'd like a first classic car, but I don't like inconvenient surprises, and I want I want to rely on it, and I want to be able to service it, I want to enjoy it, then this is your car. So with that, Lawrence Romanosky and Aidan Goss from Calgary, Canada. This is a great example. Rust-free, original paint, California car, well serviced, doesn't need anything. You just get in this car, drive this car anywhere tomorrow, okay? And it's for sale on Bring a Trailer, modest reserve, so somebody should get a great classic. Thanks, please like and subscribe.